Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here. I know most of you. I'm Doug Dunbar. And I had a life before going to jail and a life in many ways that's better now um, after jail, not because of jail, but because of many things that have followed in my life since being in jail. So before jail, I worked in the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate, the governor's office. I was former Governor John Baldacci's press secretary. I was Maine's chief deputy secretary of state. But many of those years I was self-medicating with alcohol to deal with obsessive compulsive disorder, mental illness that spiraled out of control on 9/11 when I was working in Washington, living near the Pentagon, and a plane crashed into the Pentagon not far from where I lived, and my OCD spiraled out of control. I spent 16 years self-medicating with alcohol very privately, and on my sixth arrest, I spent 4.5 months in jail. Half of that time in Penobscot County Jail, half of it boarded out to Two Bridges Regional Jail in Wiscasset. And it opened my eyes to so many of our failures as a society and as a government and as a criminal legal system. And I said to myself, when I get out of jail, if I can get my own health in order, I've got to try to do something about this. I worked in government for 30 years. I tell people I have two great regrets. Number one, that I drove drunk hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, put all of your lives in danger potentially. Fortunately, never had an accident. But the other great regret is that I worked in government and I paid so little attention to who's in jail, why they're in jail, how long they stay in jail, what do they look like, who are they, what becomes of them, and on and on and on. And so um, when I got out of jail, one of the things that first came to my attention was that Penobscot County was planning to build a much larger, very expensive new jail. And I was one of the first people to join with Larry Danziger. Some of you probably know Larry. Larry started the group. And it's not that I don't want people in jail to be in better surroundings. Of course I do. I spent 10 weeks in Penobscot County Jail, 1,700 hours. But what I really want are the things that work, things that make people better so that they don't end up back in jail. I've been out of jail 8 years, and I still go on the list of people in Penobscot County Jail, and I still recognize names because they were there with me 8 years ago.
Hmm.
And so my focus has been what works. And two things you should know about me. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about the people in Penobscot County Jail or in jail in general. Number two, I've spent almost every day for the past 8 years studying these issues. And we know what works. And it's not bigger, larger, enormously expensive jails. So Larry Danziger, who's now joined us, he started the group in early 2019. And so we've been trying to educate and trying to deal with these issues for that length of time. And it's been a difficult process in the sense that the county has moved toward building a new jail. It's had plans, designs, and then something has happened and it's backed away from that, including COVID came at one point, of course, and that really interrupted things. So this has sort of been an on again, off again, on again, off again thing. I've told people I feel like the boy who cried wolf. I keep saying, come to our group and learn about these issues, but then it kind of goes away. And so it's difficult to get people really focused on something when they're not sure what's really going to happen. But it seems as though the county is very focused on putting on the ballot this November a bond issue of maybe $85 million to build the new jail. What I want people to know about that, taxpayers, is that it's not just $85 million. It's then
You got about a minute, Doug.
Yep, it's then millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in interest payments over the next 20 or 30 years. The interest alone may well be far more than the $85 million. And so that's a little bit about the background and why we're here, and I'll stop.
Okay, thank you, Doug. We're going to welcome now Frank Zarrow of Society Impact, and he's going to explain the myth of incarceration as a requirement for public safety. Frank?
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. We're working from a recent study entitled Safety and Justice Challenge conducted by the CUNY Institute for State and Local Governance. And the findings were that decarceration programs, such as our proposed case diversion project in Penobscot County, do not adversely affect public safety, and they do not increase crime or incidents of violence. In the same way, jails and prisons do not decrease crime or violence and do not keep us safer. The report concluded that when programs are crafted and implemented responsibly, as ours is, the outcome are positive public safety outcomes, and they improve everyone's life. What changes is that lives are restored and people get well, families stay together, people work, pay taxes, and contribute to the economy. Taxpayers save money and property taxes decrease. Funds once used to keep people in jails and prisons are redirected to food, healthcare, education, housing, and treatment. The myth of public safety is that we need jailers to keep us safe. The reality is that prison and local jail systems need us to keep them funded. Prisons and jails are an $80 billion a year industry. A long list of service providers, vendors, correctional officials, and investors benefit from them. And that's one of the reasons change is so difficult. When reforms disrupt revenue, there's strong pushback on the national level, at the state level here in Maine, and at the local level in Penobscot County. What we present tonight in tonight's classroom will be based on facts, data, and both professional and lived experience. Please take time to read, ask questions, and stay engaged. And remember, the criminal legal system, jails and prisons are run by people we elect or appoint. What they do in our names. Responsible citizenship requires us to be informed and to ask questions. At the end of the day, it's not the sheriffs or the corrections staff who ultimately shut the jail door. It's all of us. So let's be sure we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Something to think about. Next, we have Bree from the No Penobscot County Jail Expansion Group, and she's going to speak about the causes of county jail incarceration versus the consequences. Before Bree starts, we'd like to get some input from all of you. If you could put into the chat 1 for yes and 2 for no, do you believe that the county jail incarceration truly keeps public safe? Does incarceration in the county jail keep the public safe? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Go ahead, Bree.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And again, thank you all so much for being here tonight. So my name is Bree, as she said, and I've been working with this org on and off for about 5 years. I'm also a justice-affected person, and my time at Penobscot County Jail marked a very pivotal but tumultuous time in my life. People don't always understand what 60 days, it sounds very small, but like Doug always says, the time that he spent there has affected his entire life, and I completely agree. Those 60 days, I wouldn't go back and try and do one over again, not one single day. It has affected me for the last 7 years. So I don't often share the full gravity of my experience publicly. There are many things that I have never shared that I experienced in there, but I will say this. There were moments that sometimes I think about them and I'm like, wow, like no one should ever have to feel what I felt or see what I saw. It just shouldn't be something that exists in this world. So I want to do a really quick exercise with you. If you are comfortable, if you can close your eyes for a moment, or if you're someone who can picture things in your mind without closing your eyes, feel free to keep them open. But I do want you to picture something, and this is probably something that has happened to you many times, where you're scrolling online. Maybe you are on Facebook. Maybe you have somehow come across a sheriff's page or some sort of website, and you see a mugshot. And in this mugshot, you see a man, and he looks thin. He's disheveled. His face is marked with scars. He's tired, gray, and sullen. And underneath his photo, there's a list of charges, and it reads multiple counts of retail theft / shoplifting. Now ask yourself, when you come across that photo, what is your very first thought? Do you think immediately, good, I'm glad. Another thief behind bars. So glad they caught them. And we've all seen these comments, right? Or do you think, wow, I wonder what he stole? I wonder why he stole it. Did he steal it out of survival? Did he steal it out of compulsion? And that right there, that moment is the distinction between consequence first thinking and cause first thinking. And we've been trained throughout our lives societally to always go to consequence first thinking, right? Like an eye for an eye, you do something, you pay for it. That's our training from the time we are babies. But if your mind went straight, and that's if your mind went straight to punishment, consequence first thinking. But if your instinct was to pause, to question, and to understand why, that's cause first thinking. You may have even said to yourself, and then to take it a step further, because either way, whether this man stole for survival or compulsion, he needs help, right? There's something going on there, and that's what we call a root cause. And those root causes are the symptoms. Or, sorry, there are symptoms to the root cause. The visible behaviors are the symptoms: the stealing, the lying, the unpaid fines, the missed court dates, the traffic offenses, the DUIs, and we're ignoring the underlying causes of these symptoms, things like poverty, addiction, mental health, and trauma. Instead of diagnosis and treatment, we respond immediately with punishment, arrest, public shaming, and incarceration. Imagine what that does to someone who is already in some kind of crisis. We temporarily manage the symptoms without offering true reprieve. And just like in medicine, when the root cause goes untreated, the symptom returns. That's why we witness so many cycles: arrest, jail, release, instability, over and over and over again. And sometimes we see these cycles travel through generations, from mother to child to child to child to child, and so on and so forth. Right now, okay, sorry. No one is committing crimes because it's fun to be locked up. Am I done?
You got about a minute.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. No one's committing crimes because it's fun to be locked up. Trust me. Not a single day behind the bars of PCJ or any other county jail or prison is fun for anyone. Right now, it's the central focus, though, of consequences are the central focus. And it seems that attorneys and judges work from the punitive aspect and then work backwards, instead of putting the cause as the central focus and working from that. But what if they started branching out in a meaningful way and started asking the person why they committed the crime? What if when a person gets their day in court, the judge asks why they did what they did, works from there, and finds appropriate resources that would cost much less than a single night behind bars? What if we actually started addressing the causes of criminal behavior instead of shaming and belittling people that are committing these crimes out of survival? And I'll end there.
Thank you, Bree. That's a lot to think about. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the for-profit business of incarceration, and following me will be Dr. Peter Lehman, who is a criminologist and the legislative coordinator for the Maine Prisoner Advocacy Coalition, who will also dig a little bit deeper into the issues that come from the for-profit business model that is our carceral system. The idea that incarceration means being cared for by the state is a myth. Only those deemed indigent receive the basic hygiene items, and even then the quality is poor. Women in particular face unnecessary hardship and humiliation just to access low-grade menstrual products. Food is inadequate, unhealthy, and sometimes spoiled. I myself have been involved in multiple lawsuits challenging the prison food conditions alone. This neglect fuels a profitable commissary system where incarcerated people must buy essential items, hygiene products, supplemental food, vitamins, and the facility should provide anyways. These things cost 3 and 4 times as much as it costs us. In turn, the system encourages black market trading and theft, and that creates safety risks for both the inmates and the staff. Facilities claim to support family connections, yet communication is expensive and unreliable. Phone and video calls are often prohibitively costly, plagued by poor quality, frequent disconnections. This past week, I personally experienced multiple drop calls, and there were several days when communication with certain units in the main facilities were entirely unavailable. The system persists because it's profitable. It's backed by lobbying power, and incarceration industry continues to protect and expand the model that benefits from the very people it fails to support. And I'm going to hand it over to Peter now.
Good evening. I'm Peter Lehman, formerly incarcerated and in long-term recovery, and as usual, can't find the speech button. Doug gave you a quick rundown of the relative independence and governance of county jails. In practical terms, this means that where you are arrested changes how you are treated and what happens to you, even though it's all the same state criminal legal system. If you're arrested in Penobscot County, you're more likely to get sentenced. You're more likely to stay in jail before your trial than if you were arrested in Cumberland County or York County. You're also less likely to get sentenced to probation. You're also more likely to get sentenced to prison. And you're also more likely to reoffend. Before 2020, when you were arrested, where you were arrested determined whether or not you were supplied with menstrual products in jail. Some jails did not supply menstrual products, including sanitary pads and tampons. I give this as an example of how different the jails are. We had to pass legislation. We had to go to the legislature and pass legislation to require jails to provide menstrual products. And of course, there was opposition. And then when the requirement was put into place, there was hooting and hollering from counties about unfunded mandates. The counties love to get money from the state to help pay for their jails, but they hate having any standards imposed. Which brings us back to the issue of what happens when counties keep too many people in jail and then want to build a new jail to make more room. Remember, I said that you were more likely to have to stay in jail before trial in Penobscot County? That's because of choices. Bail was denied or set too high for you to pay, or there aren't pretrial programs available. These are choices made in counties. Some people pretend that keeping people locked up is being tough on crime. It's not. It's being dumb on crime. Bail is not for punishment. It's to ensure that the defendant shows up for trial. The Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits the government from requiring excessive bail. Excessive bail shall not be required. Focusing on securing a defendant's appearance at trial rather than punishment. Even in medieval England, bail developed as a way to reconcile two principles, ensuring the accused appeared in court while avoiding the unnecessary pretrial imprisonment. The English Bill of Rights, when the counties, I forgot about this. The English Bill of Rights in 1689 prohibited excessive bail, a principle deliberately incorporated into American legal thought and our Constitution. In other words, when the colonies established their own systems, they carried forward the idea that liberty before trial should be the default, with financial guarantees used as a safeguard rather than a punishment. Actually, it turns out most of the time bail isn't even necessary. Back in 1961, way back then, the Manhattan Jail Project demonstrated that 99% of their clients released without bail, without cash bail, still appeared for court. By 2010, the Bureau of Justice Statistics data Bureau of Justice Statistics data showed that jail populations, and especially pretrial inmate populations, had continued to rise even as reported crime rates went down, and this is still going on. And that the growth in pretrial inmate populations was driven by the use of money bail. In other words, if you want to keep down your costs, you need to limit the pretrial population. Most of all, you must change the reliance on money bail and create adequate and effective pretrial programs, not wasting money on creating more beds. The most comprehensive analysis of the research on pretrial detention was published in 2021, and I quote, and I have it up on the screen now that I've figured out how to now remember to change that screen. We did not find any evidence of a consistent or reliable deterrent effect of pretrial detention on either the failure to appear or recidivism. This should come as no surprise. The research literature has been clear on this issue for several decades now. Getting tough on crime or on recidivism or juvenile delinquency or school violence, pick your preferred form of misbehavior, as a general strategy is a pretty bad idea. So in conclusion, keeping people in jail pre-trial is dumb on crime since it makes things worse. It cuts people off from pro-social attachments and for positive interventions in the community. And it costs us a lot of money, both in current costs and in building unnecessary capacity for the future. Thank you all for being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Peter. We have a quick question now for the audience again. Just something to think about. 1 for yes, 2 for no in the chat. Have you ever thought about the carceral system, both the county jails and the state prisons, as existing as a business entity and as an expense to the community, the way that Peter has explained it tonight? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Thought about this system as a business. Now that you understand the county jail system and what it entails and some of the glaring issues it possesses, we'll present a segment about the impacts of county jail incarceration and introduce the impacts on everyone, including every one of us. While listening, please remember the original reflection question. If you haven't yet jotted down your answer, please do that. The one thing you believe about the county level justice system in Maine. And Bree's going to start us off here with the impacts of county jail incarceration on our overall community.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. Thank you so much. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Peter said in the way that incarceration, county jail incarceration, impacts the whole. And then we'll kind of break down further how it impacts people. And we'll have Dr. Lonnie Graham tell us about how it impacts like the medical system and all of that. So I'm just going to kind of preface and then we'll get a little bit deeper into it. But short jail stays destabilize lives. So you may think that somebody going to jail for just 2 to 3 days is, it's nothing, that, your whole life cannot possibly blow up in a matter of 2 to 3 days, but oftentimes it does for many people. And I want you to consider that when we think of people who go to jail, and again, this is like societal brainwashing and training, oftentimes we're trained to think of people who maybe are unhoused, who look a certain way, who wear certain clothes, who are poor, perhaps. We don't think of the everyday person going to jail, but I will tell you, everyday people like you and I get arrested every single day for various things. And when they do, or when anyone does, they lose their housing potentially. They may lose employment. They may lose access to care, or they may lose a spot in a drug treatment program. There are many programs where you have to show up every day. And if you don't, you lose your spot. And I want you to think about how losing a job, losing access to care, losing your housing, how those 3 things could very much upset your life. And then I want you to think about how that affects the family system of that one single person. So if you lose your housing, your entire family, especially if you're a parent or if you have other people who you care for living with you, that affects them. They go to school and their mood, the trauma that they have experienced affects their teachers. That affects their principal. It is such a ripple effect where you think one single person being arrested is not a big deal, and it does not cost it doesn't cost you, the taxpayer, much. Listen, one single person being arrested can lead to a lifetime of trauma. You don't understand what they go through when they are being arrested. As Elizabeth said, and Larry, they were talking about in the chat, they're not guilty yet. So they're in there having their lives destabilized in a short jail sentence when they haven't even been convicted of a crime yet. And so imagine after they are convicted of the crime, if they do become convicted, and then the trauma and the mental health issues that may develop because of what they have to deal with later. So it's just the start. The arrest is just the start of the destabilization. And one person's life being destabilized is the destabilization of an entire community because of that ripple effect. Every single person in the household is affected. Every person in their school, in their classroom is now affected. And it just goes on and on and on, like throwing a stone into a pond. So when you think of one person being affected, I want you to think, no, that one person is my brother, my sister, my auntie, my uncle. That is everyone around us every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. I'm really just going to reiterate some of the things that Bree has said, because this impact, this financial impact on family and community is something that we really want you to think about, and it's an important message for you to walk away from. And as soon as I finish, we're also then going to have Heidi Wheaton, who's the founder of Breaking the Cycle, a women's recovery residence in Millinocket, speak. But basically, just to add to what Bree and Peter have said, it is a myth that the cost of incarceration is borne by the state. Incarceration triggers a destructive ripple effect, destabilizing families and entire communities. Financial fallout is immediate the moment that you hit the jail. You can lose your home, as Bree said, vehicles, property, employment. Beyond that immediate loss of a parent and household stability, disruption forces children to move to other households, other people, and move schools, and that is also an economic cost. Missed obligations like school tuition or a car payment will permanently damage your credit or some future opportunities. Individuals sit in jail waiting for constitutionally mandated representation. That hidden cost falls maybe on their employer, who loses staff, has to cancel services, affects their business and members of the community. Family is burdened by the industrial system because they need to now pay for commissary and provide needs for that person: hygiene, communication, phone calls. The stress from these financial and emotional strains is devastating to individuals, families, and communities. The public health cost of incarceration is paid by all of us. And now please welcome Heidi Wheaton, founder of Breaking the Cycle, a women's recovery residence in Millinocket. Heidi?
Hi, thank you. This has all been so incredible. I just trying to listen to all of it, and I was trying to look up some figures today because I want to sound as specific as I can about what is happening in this state, our state. And so I want to qualify a little bit for you so that you understand that I have walked the walk. I went to school at 20 years old. I took 2 years off from high school, and I became a rehabilitation worker, a bachelor's of science degree. I then worked in various fields throughout my adult life, but I continued to head into the bottle. I worked for Adult Protective Services for 10 years before I finally had my world come crashing around me. 3 OUIs later, okay, 3 times incarcerated, one in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And that was not even my bottom. My bottom was sitting in intensive care for probably the 4th time, and having pancreatitis and people wondering whether or not I was trying to kill myself, because I didn't remember. I was a blackout drinker. I didn't remember what I did, how I did it, any of the details whatsoever. So I realized that God had saved me. Bottom line, God had saved me. So I put myself back together piece by piece through the rooms of AA. Thank God for AA. And I started to put myself back together and realized I had to come back to Maine. I had to stop running away. The Greyhound therapy didn't work. And so I went back to Maine and I cleaned up my mess little by little. And I do mean little by little. And it has been 14 years. I just got my 14-year chip last night. And so thank you. I just want to say that this is a journey for every one of us, because there isn't one person that hasn't been affected by addiction related issues in our state. It's your mother, it's your sister, it's your aunt, it's your cousin, it's your grandmother, it's every walk of life. And what I started with 7 years ago was a recovery house for women in Millinocket, came back to my hometown where I started my addiction related issues. I come from a really long line of alcoholics in a mill town that's what we did growing up. And that's what I learned. And I don't give any excuses. I don't blame anybody. It is what it is. And I came back to try to make a difference. And I'm telling you, I now have from one staff to 13 staff members. The majority of them have come through my program and are going to college, are having their children reunited with them, are working and living and surviving and thriving in our working class in our hometown here in Millinocket, and they're loving it. So I want to say a couple of things about that. We have to have a village. Every one of us has a village. Every one of us has the ability to ask for every entity that cares within your village to participate in helping individuals with addiction related issues. Now, the statistics that I looked up today on Chat GPT, it's my new best friend, gotta say. So I just looked it up. Okay, so it costs about $117,000 per year per person for incarceration. Okay, that's just right off the top. It's about 10 grand a month. Okay, so you're looking at that. I just looked up how much it costs for these county jails to be farming out different people because they don't have enough room in their county jails. And that costs serious money. And then I looked up the children, which is kind of where I wanted to go because that's why breaking the cycle is breaking the cycle. When I was probably 6 years sober, I had my grandson who was 7, 8 years old at a women's meeting in Auburn, Maine. And he had his little McDonald's meal with me and he was listening to the AA meeting and he said, Grammy, can I say something? At the time, his mother, my daughter, was in Crossroads because she was an addicted person. And so I said, sure, buddy, you can say something. And he stood up and he was never shy. And he said, I want to be the person in our family to break the cycle. Well, it weighed on my heart. It weighed on my heart so much that this is why I do what I do. And this is the reason that I can see these families turning around and they're creating an entirely different culture, raising their children sober. They are good mothers. They are smart people. They are thriving. They are grateful that they have jobs. They are, trying to regain a status of their life and rebuild something with their self-worth and ethics and morals and values, and they're gaining spirituality. And how do we do that? We do that as a village. We have to stop pouring money. I mean, we pour money into these children being removed. We pour money into CPS workers sitting in motel rooms and watching these children, and we don't think we're doing any damage by having these children being watched 24 hours by a total stranger in a motel room. We pour money into foster care, into other types of housing, into legal fees, into courtrooms, lawyers, guardian ad litems, fines, fees, the incarceration. It's crazy the amount of money that we spend, and about 60 to 70% is what they're saying right now is people sitting in jails with addiction related issues.
Heidi, you have
When I have availability, I'm sorry, what?
You have about a minute.
So I have availability. I have not yet had one time had a full house of 15 people. By the time I make the screenings and get these people so that they are accepted, I can do that quickly in a couple of days from the jail systems. But it takes me sometimes a month to get somebody out of jail, that they have to go and they have to get a court order, and every court is different in this state. So if you're going to look at the dysfunction, we have to look at our court system, which one time, if it's this court system, we can have somebody get a signed order from a judge and they're over to my house. In our house is now a 3.1, 3.5 level of treatment care, has been licensed for over 2 years. We average $1,000 to $4,000 a month versus the $1,700,000 a month $117,000 a month, so that you can actually have people that get help and get their addiction treated and get into recovery. Our success rate, if they graduate my program, is somewhere between 80 and 90%. And I watch them grow, and I watch them have jobs in this town, and I watch them go to college, and I have their children come running around in my facility, and it is incredible. And we want to start supported living housing. We want to have apartments to step down into. We want to help that whole process of reunification. I want to do it through programs that already have money, like gear and safe families, so that we're not taking money out of our government. We're taking what is already in existence and making this work. All we're looking for is the money to be funneled to being able to be in recovery. And that's all I'm asking for.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Heidi. It's incredible work. Now, please welcome Ben and Frank, both from Society Impact. They're going to talk about the impacts of the county jail incarceration on the local community, including all of us taxpayers. Take it away, Ben and Frank.
Hi, I just wanted to start off by acknowledging that one of our colleagues at Society Impact, who's currently incarcerated at Maine State Prison, uh, can't be here right now because of like certain rules, but he helped a lot with planning and preparing for this. So I just want to say thank you to him, and I want to read a short thing that he wrote. Having spent over 3 decades within Maine's Department of Corrections, I lived through the old punishment-centered approach used in most U.S. lockups. It never worked. Prisons and jails expanded while communities were not safer. Today, many recognize these failures and the need for alternatives. Maine has already pioneered a better model. The Maine model of corrections focuses on restorative justice and rehabilitation, helping reduce recidivism and reliance on incarceration. It has shown that treating people with dignity and addressing the root cause creates real, lasting change. Building a jail in Penobscot County is a step backwards. From my perspective, more cells do not create safer communities, they continue the cycle. Instead of burdening taxpayers with another costly facility, we should invest in the programs already working. Real public safety comes from common sense solutions, not more prisons and higher taxes. Yeah, and so we want to talk a little bit about how the main way jail expansion is paid for in the United States is usually through property taxes, which is an example of how mass incarceration doesn't just affect people who are involved in the legal system, it impacts everyone in the community. Like a typical homeowner in Penobscot County pays about $1,500 to $2,300 a month per year in property taxes. But by our estimation, because of just how much of the budget building this new jail would take up, there'd probably be, in order to pay for it, the most likely method would be a 13 to 50% increase in property taxes, which could be a $200 or $300 raise annually for people. And I mean that's not an unsubstantial amount of money that people feel.
Thank you, Ben.
And there were also, thanks, Bennett. And in addition to the direct fiscal impact on households, there are impacts on children. There are impacts on increases in social services that are required when there's an incarcerated parent. There are juvenile justice problems that begin with school disciplinary problems, which also translate into justice, legal system involvement. Putting people, the very important point that Peter made in his presentation about bail, using bail punitively and keeping people in jail basically punishes economic status. And add to that the unspeakable, we'll learn more about it we're fortunate to have our colleagues at the Maine Indigent Defense Center here tonight. The unspeakable crisis in public defense in Maine, which has resulted in people sitting in jail prior to going to trial without a lawyer. That's the sort of thing that shouldn't happen. And it affects communities. It affects the family, it affects the individual, and it costs people money.
Thank you, Frank. So now we'd just like to take a moment to sort of digest everything that we've heard. But we're also asking you just to sort of take a moment of silence right now for solidarity. We'd like everyone to think about everyone who is not incarcerated, not on probation, and not under supervision, just to take a moment and a breath to think about all of those people who are not free right now. Some of our attendees are part of that population. And as Ben said, some of the people who should have been attendees are part of that population and are not able to be here due to restrictions. So if we could just take one quick breath, and if you want to stand up and stretch for a second, think about that. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Lonnie Graham. Lonnie's a family physician. She's an expert in public health issues. She's the former director of the Maine Bureau of Health, and she's a longtime public health and environmental advocate. And Lonnie's going to speak about the challenges of medical care in county jails and why community care is best. Lonnie?
Yes, good evening, and thanks to Brianne, Frank, and Sarah for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am a total beginner compared to the other speakers, and I've already learned a lot, but I do understand medical care inside county jails. Let me begin by describing a type of situation that happens in Maine too often. A young man is behaving erratically at a gas station convenience store late at night. He is knocking things over and shouting obscenities at the proprietor. He refuses to pay for the sandwich he has grabbed and won't leave when asked. Finally, the police are called and the man is arrested and taken to the county jail. When he arrives at near midnight, the jail staff now have to determine very quickly what is going on. Is he drunk? Is he on drugs? Is he psychotic? Is he suicidal? In that very moment, the county jail effectively becomes the front door of the mental health system, even though it was never designed for that role. I want to emphasize at the beginning that this is not a criticism of the correctional officers or the medical professionals working in Maine jails. Usually they are trying their very best to provide humane care in impossibly difficult circumstances. Frequent failure in that mission is inevitable, and not because they don't work hard or don't care. The problem is structural. Jails were never intended to be the healthcare providers that they have become. The first reality is that the jail population is medically complex. Because our country and state tilt toward incarcerating the poor, people of color, and the sick, people entering jails and prisons have much higher rates of illness than the general population. Mental illness, addiction, chronic disease, and trauma are all more common among individuals entering the criminal justice system. In Maine's county jails, more than half of incarcerated individuals require some form of mental health or substance use treatment. This means that the majority of people entering jails are not simply facing a legal problem, they are usually facing one or more serious health problems as well. Jail personnel are likely to be faced with a medically complex case that would challenge the most well-trained medical team in an environment that makes all such efforts much harder. As in my example, the assessing medical professionals would have no background on that young man. Perhaps he has a history of mental illness or substance use, or maybe his girlfriend just broke up with him. And it will be hard to get any medical history in the middle of the night when your only source is someone who is incoherent. The second issue is simply the purpose of jails themselves. Jails were not designed to be healthcare settings. Furthermore, jails are fundamentally different from prisons, and that's been discussed, but prisons hold people after conviction, often for years. Jails hold people temporarily, individuals awaiting trial, often never convicted of any crime, people serving short sentences, or people arrested during a crisis, as in my example case. The requirements of criminal confinement are relatively rigid and dedicated to security, not medical care. In a jail, every medical visit involves security procedures. An officer must escort the individual. Doors must be secured. Movement through the facility must be controlled. Medication management of complex illnesses is complicated even in the best environment. In a jail, medications must be stored securely and distributed at specific times under supervision to prevent diversion. Needed changes to any particular medical regimen are almost certainly made slowly, when the need for immediate action could be life-saving. Maybe the medical staff will discover that the incoming detainee is on a medication that they don't have, or that is too expensive to get. How long will the patient have to go without medication? What if a new medication is tried, but the jailed patient has an unexpected reaction? Privacy is almost non-existent. Medical conversations may occur within hearing distance of officers or other incarcerated individuals, which makes discussions about mental health, addiction, trauma, sexual life much more difficult. Imagine a pregnant woman in such a place. Will she be in handcuffs or leg irons? What if she is bleeding? What will they do? 2 lives are at risk, but the medical staff may have no experience with pregnancy. In medication, we try to treat illness in the least restrictive and most therapeutic environment possible. Jail is almost the exact opposite of that. Then there is the need for adequate medical staff within the walls. No matter how well-intentioned, if the medical case is complex and the staff is insufficient, the patient is bound to suffer. Recruiting healthcare professionals to work inside correctional facilities is difficult everywhere, and that is particularly challenging in rural states like Maine, where healthcare staffing is already limited. As a result of all these challenges, patients inside will suffer, the families will suffer, and the consequences, both medical and financial, of this system are substantial. Healthcare is now one of the largest expenses in county jail budgets. For example, the Penobscot County Jail has reported spending $2.5 million per year on inmate medical care alone. Across Maine, counties report that healthcare costs are among the fastest growing components of jail spending. One of the reasons for these costs are so high is that Medicaid, called MaineCare in our state, generally cannot be used to pay for health care inside a jail. When someone is incarcerated, their MaineCare coverage is effectively suspended. That means counties and ultimately local taxpayers must pay the full cost. In recent years, Maine County jails have made progress in the area of substance use. For example, many jails now provide medically supervised withdrawal treatment and medication-assisted therapy for opioid addiction. Some individuals have said that receiving treatment in jail quite literally saved their lives. But this raises an important policy question. If a jail is where people first receive effective treatment for addiction or mental illness, that tells us something important about the gaps in our communities. Jails should not be the place where people first encounter addiction treatment or psychiatric care. A person with a serious illness who comes back into the community with a felony on his or her record will have a much harder time in recovery. Needed services should be available in the community before someone is arrested, and often they are. They are just not being accessed. Obviously, we need to address these community failures, But while we are doing that, we need to move away from this system as it currently stands. The answer is increasingly clear. Whenever possible, individuals should be diverted from jail and into community treatment programs. Let me close with this thought. The people working in Maine's community jails are doing their best. Many are deeply committed, but the fundamental truth remains. Jails are not healthcare institutions. When we rely on them to treat addiction, mental illness, and chronic disease, the care is fragmented, expensive, and less effective. If we want better outcomes for individuals, for communities, and for taxpayers, we should reserve jail for situations where detention is truly necessary. And for everyone else, we should invest in community-based programs that address the underlying health problems before people enter the criminal justice system. That approach is not only more humane, but also better medicine, better public policy, and ultimately less expensive for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lonnie. It's a lot for us to think about. And as we sit here and think about that, we are all hoping that as you've all sort of gathered by now, there is a better way to solve the issues and impacts of incarceration in our jails. And so we'd like to welcome back Ben Miller and Frank Zaro of Society Impact, and they're going to describe the philosophy of what diversion is. And go ahead, Frank.
I'll just start, and then Ben, if you could please, and we'll just go back and forth. A diversion plan is a program that recognizes that there are certain levels of offenses and cases that do not belong in the core criminal justice system. A diversion plan is not to be confused with a deferred prosecution plan or conditional release program, which are such things that are usually employed by good faith efforts by sheriff's departments sometimes and DA's offices. A diversion plan wants to take people away from the criminal justice system and put them in a program, on a special calendar that addresses the reasons that they're at risk for incarceration. We came up with a plan that has 3 entry points and 9 tracks for dealing with people at various levels of potential legal system involvement. And what we did was we decided initially that where it belonged was in the judicial branch. And so we prepared a proposal and submitted it to the judicial branch and had ongoing discussions with the judicial branch, Barbara Cardone in specific. And we've talked about creating special court parts that take cases and divert them from the core criminal justice calendar and put them on a special calendar dealing with mental health, housing, addiction, caregiving status, economic issues, poverty, low-level property crimes, all of these things that should not be in the core criminal justice system, but which usually are and which stay with people forever. And so we created a system collectively with the Penobscot County Jail Expansion Group, with the help of Maine Pretrial Services and with the input from Barbara Cardone in the Maine Judiciary. And we created a program that recognizes, as you know, this quote that everybody's probably tired of hearing me talk about, that Bishop Tutu, spending more time at the top of the river figuring out why people fall in and less time at the bottom of the river trying to figure out how to pull people out. So Ben, if you could describe our system in some more detail, I think that would be helpful.
So yeah, what makes our program different than, deferred prosecution or alternate sentencing is that what it's meant to do is it's supposed to, like, at the time of arrest, it's meant to pair people instead of throwing them in jail and booking them and charging them. It's meant to link them with services they need that can help solve the core problem that led them to offend in the first place. Like, for example, if you're having a mental health crisis, it's supposed to pair you with mental health services. If you're, you know, if you're going through, if your crime is related to poverty, it's meant to link you with services to help you with that, charities, things like that. If you, you know, if, you know, yeah, things like that. Sorry, I'm not great at public speaking, but yeah, and the 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 logic behind this is that this is better at solving the core issues that lead people to offend in the first place because jail and prison aren't really set up to do that. They're meant to be punishments more than they are meant to be healing processes or things that can correct these the core issues that lead people to offend. Like Lonnie was saying earlier, jails jails are not meant, they're not the same thing as prisons. They're not meant to hold people for long term for very serious offenses. Jails are supposed to be temporary,
Are
and
all
when
the
they
speakers done?
and when they do and when they do hold people, it's for low level crimes, things that are usually not that serious. And so building a new jail is not only much more costly, it is, and this is supported from data from all over the country and all over the world. It is much more costly and is much less effective at actually reducing crime and reducing, reducing, or increasing public safety. Um, you know, Building a new jail, instead of investing that, and I mean, it's going to be tens of millions of dollars. Some estimates are saying like up to $100 million. Imagine how much that type of money could do if it was invested in programs that were actually meant to link people with services that, can help them actually get to the core problems that lead them to offend in the first place. And there's ample data to show that mass incarceration and jail expansion are correlated with decreases in public safety and do not, sorry.
No, that it sounded like you were done, but thank you very much, Ben and Frank. And what you just talked about with the cost, I hope that those numbers really hit people hard. And so now let's hear from a few people who are doing exactly what you're talking about, who are doing the important work in the diversion space. And these folks are from Maine Pretrial Services, Elizabeth Simoni and Ryan Affont. I hope I pronounced your last name well, but please tell us about Maine Pretrial Services.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate being here tonight, and thank you to everyone who's here. And it's been great to hear the speakers. I'm Elizabeth. I work at Maine Pretrial Services. Ryan is my colleague. He is a supervisor for Northern Maine and Down East and has been an integral part of work in Penobscot County for us. Maine Pretrial was originally formed and known as the Cumberland County Bail Project. We've been in existence for more than 50 years, and I think Ryan can advance that slide. We were incorporated in 1983 and under our current 501c3 non-for-profit status. Peter Lehman had mentioned the Manhattan Bail Project. That is essentially where we got our start. In the 60s, Bobby Kennedy was very active in terms of bail reform. And weirdly, we are just now coming back to a national movement that is focused on and committed to bail reform. The idea that money bail does not assure appearance at court and certainly does not necessarily keep the community safe. We have a volunteer board of directors. And a fun fact about us, we were the first pretrial services agency in the country to receive national accreditation. I've been really happy and lucky to be with the agency since the late 80s when I interned. Here's our mission statement. It is purposely broad in that we will commit to providing case management, supportive services, and resource connections to individuals involved in civil and criminal legal systems in the state of Maine. Purposely broad because we contract for services to do pretrial release, which is criminal, And then we also do like family recovery court work, which Ryan will speak about more, but we have to be able to span that whole justice involved piece. Our current suite of services, I'm not going to read out loud to you, but we're in 13 counties in Maine. And I want to go back to the original question that was posed for our thought. And that is, what is the one thing we believe about the county legal system in Maine? And I would say, looking at this chart, it's incredibly fragmented. We have to fight and hustle to provide services across counties for pretrial. We're very lucky. We have a statewide uh, presence in treatment court, which Ryan will speak to, but pretrial is fragmented. Does the county want the service? Does the county think they're crowded? Does the county think the service is worth it? So on to the next slide. I would say what is really important to us as an organization is that we are hired to manage the constitutional safeguards that are important to people who are presumed innocent and are in pretrial lockup. So I already mentioned individual county contracts. That's big time fragmentation in Maine, different rights depending on where you are. We are nationally accredited. All of our pretrial staff are specially trained as pretrial practitioners. Basically means they have to take a constitutional law examination so they do not run over people's constitutional rights. We adhere to national standards. We want to maximize release, appearance, and public safety. So when we are hired in a system, these are the things that we care about. We also collect our data. And in the next slide, just quickly, we look at how many days people stay out of jail. You can see the statewide number is in the 400,000 range for last year. Pretrial in particular is 300,000. In the next slide, just quickly, we released almost 3,000 people in 2025, and 90% of them did not pick up a new charge before court. And 90% and 97% showed up for court. The next slide is about Penobscot pretrial services. This is just a 9-month look. We had our contract terminated September 30th. We stopped services in Penobscot. But prior to that, from January 1st, we were able to serve almost 400 people. And again, in the next slide, we have the pie charts. People did pretty well. We had about 90% that made it through without arrest, and we had 93% that appeared for court. Ryan's going to speak about treatment court now. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Quick talk about treatment and recovery courts. There are 14 treatment and recovery courts run through the Maine Judicial Branch. Maine Pretrial Services is contracted by the Office of Behavioral Health to provide case management services across the courts, and we assist in establishing partnerships with treatment providers for these courts. Couple of models of treatment courts across the state: family recovery courts, adult treatment and recovery courts, veteran courts, and co-occurring disorders courts. They're all generally similar. The family courts are civil, while the rest are criminal case courts. Is, I guess, the only key difference. However, the adult court, you see the specificity of the vet court. These are naturally veterans, and co-occurring works more with mental health, along with the co-occurring symptoms of substance and alcohol use disorder. These courts adhere to national best practice standards run through an organization called All Rise. They're predicated on the basic concept of risk, need, and responsivity. So responding to risk and need, addressing those issues, and helping to reduce recidivism. Each program has a general goal of offering a ratio of incentives to sanctions from 10 to 1. Over time, we've learned that as courts and probation models offer more incentives to defendants, we see better outcomes in relation to recidivism data. We collect a ton of data across these courts, report quarterly and annually to the Office of Behavioral Health, and there are data reports released by the Maine Judicial Branch each year. We also have independent evaluation. In theory, we try every 5 years. The last one was published back in December of 2019. We're working on establishing the next evaluation for the past 5 years. Some quick data to highlight about treatment courts across the state of Maine. These courts served 444 people in 2025. 223 people were admitted into treatment courts across the state. 108 commenced, meaning they successfully completed the program. 68 were terminated from the program. A total of 859 people were referred to the 14 courts across the state in 2025. And a quick nugget, our staff at Maine Pretrial Services conduct observed alcohol and drug testing for participants across these courts. Just over 22,000 drug and alcohol tests were completed in 2025. And you can see the ratio of negative to positive tests there. Almost 92% of those tests were negative and 8.42% were positive.
So just quickly on this, we started a contract with Public Defense Services to do case management for indigent parents in child protective cases. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because it's civil, but I think with the next slide, looking at the common attributes across all of our services, it's about case planning. People need services. They need good linkages. And we need to collect our data. If we're given public monies, we have to be accountable to that. The kind of the last little bit is that basically we want to provide alternatives to incarceration. We have a couple more slides, but I think we've taken more than our share of time. So we'll just throw our emails up. And if anybody has any questions, we're happy to reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan and Elizabeth. There's a couple of us here from York County, and some of us are on the Board of Visitors there. And the sheriff and the major there praise your services, and so do we. We get the numbers of the people that you've kept out of the jail there, and we're all greatly appreciative. To continue on this frame, this is a good changeover. We've got folks here from Maine Indigent Defense Center. We have both Emily Goulet and Rob Ruffner, but Rob is going to be the one telling us about the problems of our public defense system. Rob?
Good evening, and hello to many of you I've worked with for years, and some of you I'm meeting for the first time. My name is Rob Ruffner. I'm the executive director of the Maine Indigent Defense Center, which is currently 12 attorneys based in Portland and York County, providing exclusively indigent defense to adults and juveniles in our criminal system. I think that when you think about our public defense system in Maine, is that it's very fragile, and I think that the uncounseled crisis that came to light in 2023 and has been in the news a lot since then is an example of that. When COVID hit, it exposed the fragility of a lot of different systems in our society, whether it's safety nets, public health, mental health, as well as public defense. And when I was looking back at some statistics here, what happened in many industries, the majority of them, is a lot of people moved on. They decided it was time to hang it up or to seek out a different career. And in Maine at that time, when COVID hit, we had no public defenders. We relied on completely assigned counsel, which is still the vast majority to this day. But there wasn't an employed body of attorneys doing the work that, could be relied on to stay or be recruited to fill those positions. And that was compounded by the criminal system grinding to a halt and really slowing down. I don't know. I think I can share. I'll try to share something here. Here we go. So this is statistics that are put out by the judicial branch every month, looking at the pending criminal cases in our system. It's called the Unified Criminal Docket, but the adult criminal system. It compares it a year back, and then also they always look back to what it was for the same date pre-COVID. And in the January 23, right before this, when this started to get into the news and come to a head, we had almost 85% more felonies pending than we did pre-COVID in just 4 years, and over 56% more misdemeanors pending. So that those two forces, people retiring, moving on to other careers, compounded with an crushing increase in the number of cases, led to the the uncounseled crisis growing to the point that there were more than 1,000 cases that needed to be staffed. I looked at the statistics quickly today. The uncounseled list today, there are 35 criminal cases that have been on the list for more than a month as of Monday, when the latest uncounseled list came out. In January of 23, January 3rd, there were, according to the spreadsheet we were given then, there were over 600 in cases that had been on that list for over a month, some of them for several months, some over a year, according to that spreadsheet that were needing counsel. So that's sort of the uncounseled, some of the root causes of the uncounseled crisis that we're still dealing with the aftermath of now. I can only imagine, having talked with individuals, what it's like to be stuck in a jail and not even have an attorney to call to help sort things out, to ask questions of, to figure out your next court date, to make bail arguments for you, to be utterly alone and cut off from your family and all of your supports and any sense of hope. I've represented people in those positions, but I recognize that I can't truly understand what it's like to be in that position. So without counsel, all of the issues that individuals have talked about, of the impacts of incarceration, even a short stay of 24 to 48 hours, and what it can disrupt in terms of the supports and the things people have in their lives that help them not reoffend or come in contact with the system again, is, I would suggest, very much compounded by a factor of multiple factors, made it much worse. In addition to our sense, in the public sense, of justice, what's happening with these individuals? Can we trust the outcomes of the cases? Is anyone investigating their case, preserving evidence, let alone working with the individuals, our clients, working with them as individuals, talking with them about discovering what their needs and unmet needs are, in trying to line up those programs and supports so they are a candidate for bail, so that, let alone being able to have someone that can make that motion and make that argument in court. It's not just making an argument in court on that day, meeting an attorney for a first time. The attorneys work with our clients and with service providers to identify unmet needs and to identify programs and supports that can address them, so that they are a good candidate for bail, not just so we can win the bail argument, but so, as Elizabeth and Ryan pointed out in their statistics, so that when they get out, they stay out.
Rob, you have about a minute.
Okay. In terms of the, I think that all of you have touched on different parts of the failures of our system, which is, we are, instead of addressing the root causes of behavior that society wants to address, we just turn to putting them in the criminal system and locking them up, rather than addressing, why is the person stealing, using substances, engaging in behavior that that we find troubling, or have decided is troubling. We just lock them up, and we're not doing anyone any good, including overall society, by refusing to address these issues. In addition, the lack of tradition, historical lack of training and support for individual defenders meant that you got a very different, depending on who your defender was and the type of case, you got a very different level of representation, and that isn't saying that attorneys were bad across the board, but there was no guarantee that their experience and training and skills matched the particular case, let alone was meeting a certain threshold. So we've made some strides. We're down from over 1,000 cases to a couple hundred, but that's a couple hundred too many. There's now several dozen of brick and mortar full-time public defenders, and we work collaboratively with them in our office. And the training is becoming much more robust. But we're very much just at the beginning of that process of improving the breadth and the depth and the quality of the service we provide our clients so that we can give better representation to our clients so they can be heard by us and by the system, and that we can advocate for better outcomes for our clients, because it's really about our clients and serving them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. I think you've given a lot of information and sort of piggybacked on Peter's the stupid of the system, and hopefully we can do something about that. I'm going to hand it over to Bree now. She's going to do some rapid fire questioning of some of the panelists and basically speak to us a little bit before that. Bree?
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you all of you guys for speaking. It's been really incredible. We're not quite done though. So before we do move into our rapid fire round, I want to take a moment and talk about the racial disparities that exist in the carceral system. Black individuals are incarcerated at 4 times the rate of their white counterparts. White individuals typically do less time for more severe charges. And Black individuals are not just incarcerated more often, but their stays are often longer, and they often have higher bails set. This is not accidental. This is systemic and institutional. I encourage you all to take time beyond tonight to learn more about what's driving these disparities, the cycles of incarceration, the impact of adverse childhood experiences, which are often referred to as ACEs. And in a resource that we'll provide at the end, there is the name of this book that I have found very healing for myself to read and understand. And I think that many people who've endured any kind of traumatic experience should absolutely read this book. And the reality of generational incarceration within BIPOC communities. These are not isolated issues. They affect us all, and they demand our attention. If you're looking for a place to start, we've shared a resource from Pew Research Center that breaks this down further, and that will be on our research list, or resource list, excuse me. So let's please carry this awareness with us in our everyday lives and help us spread this awareness far and wide. Okay, I'll pass back to you, Sarah, for a moment.
Thank you, Bree. Bree's going to, again, do a rapid fire question, but again, we'd like to revisit the reflection question with a second part. If you remember, what is the one thing you believed about the county level justice system in Maine? And right now, we'd like you to sort of reflect, was your belief based in reality or perception? Has this forum changed your belief at all? And what about these changes, hopefully there are some, will you carry into future decisions, conversations, and then this very important year into your voting? So if we could just think about that for a few minutes. And is there anyone, we have just a couple of minutes before we hand it back over to Bree. First hand up wins. Is there anyone who would like to share their answer to their reflection question? And if not, I'm just going to hand it back to Bree.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, let's see. It is 7:21. I'm going to make sure I have a gallery view here for this. I do want to take until 7:24. If Doug Dunbar can quickly give us, so we did not have time up until now, we have about 2 minutes for a story about incarceration so that people who've never been incarcerated can understand a little bit of what it's truly like on the inside. What is it like from, the minute you wake up till you go to bed? Doug, you have 2 minutes and I'll tell you when it's 7:24. Thank you.
Yeah, Doug can't do anything quickly when it comes to these topics, and most of you know that. But most of you are somewhat familiar with incarceration. And by the way, I think what I really want to say is thank you for people who care about these issues, for whom it hasn't really been personal. You know, again, I thought I was a caring person. I was in government. I was in government to try to help people. I paid little or no attention to these issues. So until it became personal. So thank you to those of you, and I mean that sincerely. I don't know what drives you to care about these issues because, again, I paid no attention. So thank you. People have said to me, "What is it like to be incarcerated?" I said, "Well, do you have a large bathroom in your house?" Well, imagine being locked in it most of the day and night. And when you knock on the door and say, "Hey, when can I get out?" You're often told, "We don't know." Um, and then imagine that you're in that locked room and there's someone called an attorney who might be able to help you, and you can't reach that person. And I don't know how many times I was asked to help a fellow resident, inmate, write something to their attorney because the person couldn't write well or felt as though they couldn't express what they wanted to express to their attorney. And they had to write to that person because if you try to call from that phone on the wall, even if you can afford to call, the attorney's office isn't going to answer, isn't going to take your call most of the time. It is unbelievably frustrating. And this is coming from someone who was guilty. I was guilty of everything and then some. But some people are there who are not guilty at all or are guilty of far less than they're charged with. So, and then people have said to me also, well, we need a new jail in Bangor because the building is old and I've tried to say you're in your cell much of the time. And I was in a jail in Wiscasset, Maine, a pretty new building, but jail cells, after a while, one is like another. People doodle on the walls, they put up pictures, and after a while, whether the building is old or new, large or small, that jail cell looks like the next jail cell and the next jail cell. And you're locked in that room. So I don't want people to think it's inhumane. By the way, I wrote in the chat some of this stuff. When people say it's inhumane to be in Penobscot County Jail, what's inhumane is that we keep people there far longer than we should. And we treat them very poorly. And so it's not about the age or the design or the problems of the building. It's the system. And lastly, we have to stop thinking of jails, and someone else said this, Lonnie and others, we have to stop thinking of jails as places of treatment. I've said if I were to see the best psychiatrist in the world for 1 hour a week, of course, it would never happen, but the best psychiatrist, 1 hour a week, but the other 167 hours in that week, I'm treated like an animal and I'm locked in a cage, I'm not going to get well. Jails, old, new, large, beautiful, they're not treatment centers. And too many people in my recovery world believe this, and it is not true.
Thank you, Doug. As always, that was incredible. Thank you. Very powerful. Great way to wrap this up. However, we're going to do it quick. We're trying this out. So panelists, if you can be ready to answer questions very quickly. This is, again, if it goes awry, I'll just say, okay, we're done. We're going to do a rapid fire round for 4 minutes. I'm going to ask just a few questions. I'll ask a question if one of you who was on the panel or any speakers tonight, if you know how to use the raise your hand button on Zoom, if you can click that when you're ready, or any kind of reaction so I can just see that your name is lighting up in some way. I will ask the question. If you have the answer, hit a reaction or do the hands up, okay? Just like Heidi just did. Yes, thank you. Okay, perfect. So, and then you'll have 45 seconds max to answer the question and we will move on to the next. So that's the whole purpose of rapid fire. It's quick and it goes, but these are hard-hitting questions. So first one, who benefits from the current carceral system staying the same? Who benefits from the current? All right, Francis, I saw you first. Frank.
System administrators who keep employed, investors in prisons, whether private, and service and goods providers to prisons, and unions for corrections officers.
Thank you. You did that in like great time. Lonnie, do you want to answer that if you can do it really fast?
Well, I think he said it all.
Okay.
There's corporations involved in the prison, in the big prison system beyond the jail. And yeah, there's a big financial aspect to it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank
You're muted.
you, Jay. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question and we'll do it the same way. What is one truth about incarceration that makes people uncomfortable but needs to be said? One truth about incarceration that makes people uncomfortable but needs to be said. Peter Lehman. Oh,
Jeff
wrong one.
Ryman.
Peter.
Years ago, Jeff Ryman wrote a book called The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. And his whole thesis is that if you were to go out and design a system that was blaming the under people, blaming those lower in the social structure than you couldn't do better than our system. I'm proud to have used that as a textbook in my criminology class many, many years ago. And it's still a truth that is, and we've all of what we've learned, including about mass incarceration, is that you have targeted groups, and that's who's losing, and you know that who wins by keeping them down.
I couldn't have answered that better. Thank you so much. Sarah, did you have something? And we're going to wrap that up. Thank you. We only got a few in there, but it is almost 7:30. So Sarah, did you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I just want to say that every person supports this system. We pay taxes, we support this system. And if we don't fight to change it, it's entirely on us. This is our prison system. How people suffer in there every day, how families suffer, we pay for that.
Yes, without the choice. Like we have no choice in the matter, right? Like we have to pay for it. Yeah, so it is disturbing. All right, so it is 7:30 now. What we're going to do, I'm going to pass it back to Sarah to really end it before we hit the off record button. But I do want to give a moment after we turn record off for any questions, just off the book. If you guys have any questions that you want to answer, that you want answered tonight, that you want to ask any of our panelists who are here, please stay for a moment. If you cannot stay past 7:30, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to give it to Sarah to end us off.
Yep, sorry, playing with too many buttons. So this is a QR code that Bree put together. Please scan that for the list of resources that she put together. We would everyone in the No Penobscot Jail Expansion Group, want to thank you sincerely for your time tonight. And we really hope that you've come away learning something and that you'll ask us questions and maybe join us in the future. We give very special gratitude to Frank Zaro and Ben Miller from Society Impact, who guided us through this process of creating and executing this program tonight. And everyone here needs to know that this entire program thanks Brianne Bear, who has been behind the scenes, put the whole program together. You all know because she's the one who contacted you. She's worked every aspect of tonight's presentation while taking care of her family and being ill, on and off. So thank you to all the speakers and to all of you in the audience participating and caring about the impact of the carceral system. Your presence is not unnoticed, and we're grateful to have you. And we'll, Doug, if you want to stop the recording, we'll open it up to general questions.